Howdy. If you're like me, you see all kinds of shit flying everywhere on the internet about any number of things. And one of the most popular topics these days is quote unquote the crisis with men and boys. And the problems are real. There are some serious problems. And there's a lot of opinions and thoughts about how that ought to be dealt with, how it ought to be fixed. And as you know, if you've been watching any of Mark's and my videos, we have opinions. So today, we've got a really interesting conversation, and I'll just say, why should you listen to us or give a shit about what we have to say? Totally up to you. But besides the fact that we're clearly kind of grizzled older dudes that have a lot of life experience, we also get paid to guide men in how to live authentic, the most authentic, best version of themselves according to their inner knowing, their highest knowing, not where the crowd says you should go. So, we're going to talk about how we see the current state of men's work, particularly a narrative that often seems still to want to blame men for most of societal ills that are out there, issues that we're all dealing with. And as with anything, there's much more to the story than that. So, we're going to look more deeply and begin proposing some constructive directions that might help with this very real, very burning issue. And as with all of our videos, we're not shy about expressing our opinions and calling bullshit where we see it. If you enjoy this episode and you want to hear more from us, hit the like and subscribe button, and off we go.
So here's the thing, and this is like the thing that just made me go, oh my God, because this is the thing. Huh? You naturally, like your true self in this embodiment, is you're far more like your dad.
Yeah.
Hold
That's
on.
what I got.
Yeah, but this is the thing, and this is the connection I made. But you have spent your entire life trying to make your mom feel better, trying to make your mom feel secure. And so you've committed your life to relationship and relationships and relationship coaching because you're trying to relieve your mom's pain and the downstream impact of that someone has that's in pain the way your mom was in pain has on the people that they care about. Because your mom's chaos profoundly impacted you. She ran off your dad, and she was unable to provide the container that you needed to deal with the challenges that you had. So you were cast adrift, essentially.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, she kept you from knowing who your dad was. She kept that information from you.
Yeah.
She was all over the place, always chasing other men, but not you. And you had significant challenges.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
definitely.
you were cast adrift. And what's interesting, and I think this is common. You've been trying to heal your mom, chasing good boy points in a way, to get that safety for yourself. which has worked against who you really are, which is a free-spirited creative. And you know what free-spirited creatives, what doesn't serve free-spirited creatives? A desire for safety and security, because by their nature, they provide that for themselves.
Right.
That's what allows them to be free-spirited and creative.
Yeah. That's, I do. I mean, to the degree that you're accurate, one, I obviously wasn't aware of that. I can see it now.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Right.
think it was much that trying to win my mom over, etc.
Yep.
That was strongest in my college years and the first couple years after I graduated from college.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would try and do it with the girls I was in relationship with before I met Sarah.
Right.
And the last relationship I had before I met Sarah,
Mm-hmm.
and keep in mind there was a 3-year interval between that last relationship and me meeting Sarah, during which I had no girlfriend, wasn't looking, wasn't trying. I think I made a really fumbled attempt at a one-night stand somewhere in there that
Mm-hmm.
just not my style. It was a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then by mid to late 20s, and I think Mark had a lot to do with this, um, my conscious experience was letting a lot of that go because it was just I just couldn't, I could only interact with my mom on a limited basis.
Mm-hmm.
And I was much more aware that that had to be the case to take care of that young part of me.
Mm-hmm.
That she was just so toxic for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we got pregnant with Mark, and that was the main reason my mom, I'm sure of it. She never said this to me, but knowing my mom, it would make sense. She didn't want me to be with Sarah and, tried to break us up because she knew Sarah didn't want any other kids.
Mm-hmm.
She had her son by her first marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that. Sarah was upfront with me. If we're going to get married or we're going to be in a committed thing, don't do it if you really need to have kids, because I don't want any.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want any more.
Yeah.
And when we had Mark, Tom, her son, was 14. So that didn't make him very happy. But my mom really shifted a lot when Mark was born, because now she had her grandson. And she was great with Mark. Everything she didn't give me, she gave to Mark,
Mm-hmm.
which I was fine with. Particularly because my dad was really he wasn't around when I was really young,
Mm-hmm.
so he wasn't able to protect me from her, but he protected Mark from her.
Yeah.
And he and Mark are still really close.
Right. So here's the thing that I want you to, and this is important for understanding. Not for, I mean, it's good for you, but because this is part of that larger pattern recognition that I want to talk about later.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that you didn't let it go, like you said you did, because I think there was some pieces of that you did let go,
Mhm.
but you also redirected it. You redirected that pain elsewhere, because look at the path that you took in terms of your opinions on femininity and masculinity and men and women for the next 30 years after that, or 40 years or whatever it was. Because when I first met you, men were bad, women were good, and there were very few shades of gray.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and it's interesting, and I think this is when some of the other men in the conference we were just in were talking about the mother wound,
Right.
because even though the overwhelming majority of the emotional pain that you endured inside your family
Yeah.
came from your mom,
Yep.
because your biological father wasn't even in the picture and didn't even know you existed.
Right.
You did this, and we as men tend to do this. We still become apologists for our mothers and for the feminine. And we fight to the death as if they could do no wrong. Because that's what the shadow feminine does. That's the devouring mother.
Right. And there's interesting tension with my mom. She had that devouring mother shadow that largely played out in trying to control
Mm-hmm.
everything, everyone, not just me,
Yep.
because of, the Grand Canyon of need that she had.
Yep.
Because her mom was terrible. My grandmother was terrible with her. At
Yeah.
least from stories my mom shared with me. Though my grandmother was awesome with me during the day when she was sober. At night, it could be a different thing. But wow.
And so now overlay that, what we just talked about, to your personal evolution,
Mm-hmm.
our evolution as business partners,
Mm-hmm.
and then overlay that over the discussion at the conference and the fucking struggle session that we were forced to endure.
It remind me what you're referring to as the struggle session.
The fishbowl.
Oh, yeah. Oh. Yeah.
That was straight out of the Chairman Mao playbook. Struggle sessions were invented, I believe, by Mao, not Stalin. And if you listen to survivors of the Cultural Revolution, that was what they went through. It's an attempt at re-education.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why I keep saying, and I will say now, that men's work is not enough. We
Yep.
do not operate in a vacuum. And the idea that was continuously espoused, even by the leaders of the conference, and I'm trying to be circumspect here, but I'm failing mightily, that men are the source of all the world's pain and suffering, is absolutely laughable on its face.
Yeah.
It's an absolute absurdity. Absurdity doesn't even capture the disconnection from reality that that point of view represents.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that.
And your experience, and I'm not, this is not a criticism, because I could tell you my story, and my story is not the same, but there are some overlaps, some
Yeah.
similarities.
Yeah.
I never went through the men are bad and women are good stage,
Mm-hmm.
but I did go through a long period where I was more than willing to accept the responsibility that the shadow feminine was placing on me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And realizing, I started awakening from that fever dream about, well, it'll be 9 years ago now, which is, I'm actually ashamed that it took that long. But there it is. recognizing that recognizing that the narrative that women are and have always been victims to men, and that women have never had any power. Um, I mean, those ideas are, again, utterly divorced from reality. I mean, I
Right.
won't dispute the fact that men have had the overwhelming majority of hard power.
Mm-hmm.
100% true. No argument there.
Right.
But women have always held the overwhelming majority of soft power. They
Yeah.
just tended, although there are exceptions, everything from Queen Elizabeth to Golda Meir to, um, the queen that told him, let him eat cake, Marie Antoinette.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, those people existed.
Mm-hmm.
And to operate as if men that did bad things did so without being influenced in any way by the women in their life, whether either platonically or romantically, that's like saying those men didn't breathe air. There was simply no way. I mean, the history books are full of examples of this, or at least they used to be before they all got rewritten.
Yeah.
And so that narrative has got to be destroyed. We are and have always been in it together.
In the what?
In it together, men and
Oh, yeah.
women, we have always been in it together, always. I'm not saying there haven't been injustices, and I'm not denying the existence of any of those things. I'm not.
Yeah.
But I also know that those things are no longer true, at least in the West.
Yeah. Yep. In a way, there was an overcorrection,
Oh,
I
we're
think.
still in the middle of it in the
Yeah.
West, and the problem is and the problem is the anger is focused in the wrong place at this point. because there are, in the overwhelming majority, well, can't say the majority, in huge parts of the rest of the world, um, women are oppressed
Mm-hmm.
far more brutally than they were ever oppressed in this country or any Western country,
Yeah.
or at least within the last 500 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the
Usually
struggle
those
session we
states.
sat in the other day,
Mm-hmm.
where I basically spent the whole thing rolling my eyes out of my head. Um, Many of those women, not all of them, but many of those women talked as if they were just in the middle of abject suffering, even as they live in the wealthiest country in the world with complete freedom to do whatever they want, living a life of absurd luxury compared to the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of that old Bill Hicks joke, which is going to get me canceled, but it's a great joke. And I'm probably going to butcher it slightly, but he talks about, Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden, and Adam says, "Isn't this great? We have everything we need, and all of our dreams come true the instant we have them." And Eve says, "Yeah, it's just not enough, is it?"
Hmm.
So, I mean, obviously that's a joke and a gross oversimplification. The point of telling that joke is simply to say that we are all at grievous risk of not seeing our circumstances clearly. And to the degree that we operate in certainty,
Mm-hmm.
um, we do damage. We do massive amounts of damage, and we harm people. The other thing that concerned me, and that I will never participate in, and we will never do ever, I was appalled by the number of people that were joyfully doing their level best to impose their values on other people.
Right.
A bunch of people very happy to propagandize, manipulate, and tell people how they should live rather than helping people find out what's true for them in their inner knowing so
Mm-hmm.
that they can live their life according to their values and their spiritual leading, so they can become the best version of themselves according to what they believe. And there were a large number of people there that are more than happy to manipulate people into telling them that they should live their life the way those people think.
Right.
And for the number of leaders in that conference, I would actually argue that if you're of the school of thought that makes you believe that your values are so righteous that you have the right and the responsibility to tell other people how they should live, you have no place in personal growth or therapy or
Right.
coaching,
Yep.
because you're actively doing harm. I mean, for those people and the values they were espousing, how do they respond to religious fundamentalists trying to impose their religious values on society. How do they feel about that? What's their experience of being preached at? No, I notice I said preached, didn't say preached to, I said preached at.
Yeah. Noted. That would be a great question to ask. Almost even without any predicating context,
Mm-hmm.
but just as hey, if a religious fundamentalist came to your door to give you the good word and tell you who you ought to be and how you ought to be and all that, what's your first response or reaction going to be?
Right.
In that vein, and point them to what you hope they'll see rather than just telling them what they're doing that doesn't work.
Right. Yeah.
But,
The double standards and the hypocrisy are mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Here's the simple test, and this is a promise. This is something that we will, the two of us or anyone that's associated with Undaunted, will never do. If we wouldn't want it said to us, or recommended to us, or done to us, we won't do it, or say it, or recommend it.
Amen.
And if any coach or any therapist pretends to know what's best for you and how you should live, avoid them like the plague.
Yep.
It doesn't matter that they're well-meaning. There are a lot of well-meaning people in the world. There's an old saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Right.
And it is possibly more true in the coaching and therapy space than it is in most other spaces, with the possible exception of the political.
Well, yeah, and I think there are a lot of people that go into therapy or coaching because, they're suffering in whatever way they are, and, accounting for genuine mental illness, etc. But a lot of people, I think, go into that because they want to be told what to do and who to be or how to be. Because they don't have enough of a connection to their own sovereignty and their own, their higher self, their best self. They've been so removed from it for whatever reasons that
Right.
they're lost and adrift, and they want someone that feels trustworthy and wise and knowledgeable, tell me what to do.
Right. I think you're right. And we can and do play that role, with the caveat that what we will tell you to do and what we will give you the tools to do and what we will give you the support to do is find those answers for you.
Right.
Because your values may not be the same as my values.
Yep.
And you need to live your life by your values.
Right.
You need to find out what's true for you and go that direction. And we will be there at every step of the way to help get you there. But we don't care what path you're on.
And that is where, it was very uncomfortable for me when I had to look at it in my own life. But when you first brought up the gap between preferred preferences and revealed preferences.
Right. The preference gap, stated preferences and revealed preferences.
Right. Of stated preference. Right. To me, that just seems like one of the, I mean, it's complex, but it's really simple at the same time. Like, there's the doorway, one powerful portal to put in front of someone to try to help them to get how it all begins with getting real about what your revealed preferences really are.
Right. And just to define the terms real quick, stated preferences are what someone says they prefer, what they claim they like, what they claim they want. Revealed preferences are what they actually respond to and how they live.
Yep.
And the gap between those two things is called the preference gap.
Okay.
And what you'll find, what anyone listening to this can do this experiment now, by either by looking in the mirror and looking at their own life as clearly as they're capable of in this moment, and watching the people in your life that might be challenging for you, or that you don't understand, or frustrating for you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you might have a partner and you say, but she says she wants this. This is, and I gave her exactly what she wants, and she's still not happy. There's a preference gap. So listen to what your partner has to say. Certainly, I would never recommend that you don't, but also observe what she responds to, because it may not be the same thing. And always, 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 with no exceptions, do what she responds to. Don't argue with her about what her stated preferences are.
Right.
The verbal argument, the verbal jousting, the verbal conversation doesn't produce positive results with anyone, man or woman, because when people tell you their stated preference, they believe it to be true with all of their heart.
Yeah.
So if you try to point out the fact that you said you like this, but this is what you respond to, they're just going to get mad.
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to have an argument, and there's not going to be a resolution to that argument that works, because the person you're talking to is going to feel disrespected, unheard, and unseen, even though you may be seeing them perfectly clearly. They're not going to feel that from you.
Right.
So the verbal conversations in those cases are counterproductive, at least in terms of challenging someone's stated preferences. It's always good to know what their stated preferences are, but and don't challenge those stated preferences. Just allow them, just take it all in, and then observe. And then whatever their revealed preferences, always do that, but don't point out the gap.
Right.
Don't analyze them, don't process them, and don't make fun of them. Just allow it to be, because they are a human being doing their very best, just like you.
Yeah.
And you have the same problem, by the way.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, I mean, I agree with everything you just said, and you could use observing that gap in your partner or a friend, whatever, is it gives you an opportunity, if you're smart, okay, if she has that gap, I must have that gap because I'm human.
Absolutely.
So what are mine? And then to me, the corollary of what you just said, that was really good, practical don't do coaching. And the thing that you have to also look at is, does meeting your partner in their revealed preferences, if that takes you away from your own integrity with who you are and what's most important to you, then ideally and very uncomfortably for many, you have to tell the truth about that and
Right.
own that you might not be the right partnership.
Right. Well, it's an enormous source of conflict between humans in any kind of relationship, whether that's romantic, whether it's a work relationship, whether it's a leadership relationship like a boss employee circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
All the arguments in the discord happen because we are stating our preferences and negotiating our stated preferences and arguing about whose stated preferences are right or wrong or better or worse. And because of the limited nature of those things and the limited ability of us to know ourselves without having done that work,
Yeah.
it's very difficult to resolve those conflicts. It's one of the things that makes it hard for people to achieve and maintain long-term relationships because all the discord happens at the level of stated preferences.
Yeah.
And one of the measures of personal growth is your ability to shrink the preference gap. Because the smaller the preference gap, the more authentic you are.
Yeah.
And it works across every circumstance, every situation, every human interaction, and every human relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a good coach and a good therapist will understand that and guide you toward that by helping you know yourself, not by telling you what you should prefer,
Right.
not by telling you how you should live your life, not by telling you that you should adopt this kind of morality instead of that kind of morality. That is what's the word I'm looking for? That's an invasion
Mm-hmm.
into your personal space, into your personal sovereignty.
Yep.
Into it's a way of co-opting your autonomy as an individual so that the person you're working with can achieve whatever twisted goal they have.
Which is tantamount to, here, let me give you an engraved invitation into my preference gap.
Yes. Yes. It's very true. That's very true. I
Oh,
mean,
thank you for sharing.
I had a teacher years ago that called she used very, how do I say this? She used very blunt language
Mm-hmm.
and she called that evil. It's manipulative and it's evil. Take that for what you will.
Yeah. Yeah. And it tries to subvert or sidestep at least free will.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
that's the evil part.
Right.
And you dress it up in allegedly enlightened, I have a PhD in psychology, so therefore I'm within my I'm in my wheelhouse to
Mhm.
impose my preference gap onto you.
Right.
And I would think, most people that do that aren't aware that they're doing it.
I am more pessimistic about that than you are. And I respect your point of view.
Yeah.
I think, I think that, I think that as in our recent social evolution, you can call it the Jungian shadow. Um, you can call it dark triad traits,
Hmm.
um, have become more and more prevalent. They've come out of the closet, so to speak, more and more.
Yep.
And you can always recognize those people because they are the ones that are threatened by ideas and try to silence you.
Hmm.
And so those are the people that want to deplatform you so that your opinion can't be heard.
Right. Yeah.
And if your ideas, if what you're trying to promote to the world can't stand up to scrutiny and are threatened by a different opinion, it's probably a good idea to question what you're promoting. And if you observe someone trying to silence someone else, the person that's trying to silence others, beware of them.
Hmm.
Because at some level, there is a lack of integrity. And their agenda is not what it appears to be.
Right. Yeah, it makes me think of the comment that someone made at the event in debriefing the fishbowl. You know, you're with the wrong women. You need to pay us.
Right.
Keep that person's identity confidential. But even that comment
Mm-hmm.
is an example of what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Like
Yeah.
we, and I say we, and I will freely admit that I did not participate in this. I stayed neutral and shut down. Um, but the men in that room served those women. We listened, really listened,
Hmm.
really heard what they had to say, empathized, sympathized, validated, took responsibility for things that we didn't personally do, by the way.
Right.
And when this person you're referring to found out that some of the men would have liked to do the same thing, only in the other direction, that's the comment.
Right.
So there's an expectation of this profound service, this profound vulnerability, this profound gift, and a complete unwillingness to reciprocate. That is an example of what we're talking about.
Right. And I make up to some degree, I think significant degree, not even considering. I mean, it's the Bill Hicks joke.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, but that's not enough.
Right.
Like being heard, being felt, being empathized with, being sympathized with, and being so in your own self referential bubble that you're not even realizing who and what you're speaking into, but demanding that the other person or group gives you that.
Right. And there's only one way to well, I shouldn't say that. There's more than one way to deal with a person like that. But one perfectly valid way of dealing with a person like that is to just walk away,
Right.
because there's no upside to an argument.
Right.
And there's absolutely no upside to a debate, to a verbal debate, because the preference gap there is insanely massive.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to have a conversation that resolves that conflict without that person's self-awareness, increasing their level of self-awareness and recognizing the double standard.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the stuff is Orwellian doublespeak.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, doublespeak, for those that don't know, and it makes me sad that not everybody knows this. Doublespeak is the ability to hold two conflicting beliefs at the same time. As in, it's like believing at the same time that the sky is both blue and green.
Yeah.
And that's a terrible cognitive trap to be caught in. But it's also exactly the same kind of trap that Mao used in China, that Stalin used in Russia. And those people, by the way, happen to be the greatest mass murderers in history. The number of people they killed in the name of their ideology makes Hitler look like a rank amateur.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those are
Completely.
only two of probably 8 or 10 people that hold that ideology that we could name,
Yeah.
that just went about killing their own people in the name of their ideology. But boy, they sure felt righteous when they were doing it. Because, yeah, if you don't come along with for the ride, well, we'll just kill you and get you out of the way.
Yeah.
Now, I don't see
Listen.
that happening in Western society right now, at least not in terms of physical death. So now we use canceling and silencing
Right.
and emotional manipulation. It's all being done through soft power now, instead of the hard power that Mao used a combination of both hard and soft power. Stalin was pure hard power. He just sent you off to the gulag.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and to me, an example that is happening more here in our country is what happened in Boulder on Sunday.
Right.
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 A guy who blatantly, I want to kill all the Zionists.
Right.
Yeah. And so there's always going to be the group or party that is the opposite of your own ideology. And terrorism is built around that.
Yep. Yeah, exactly right.
And it's just such I've been thinking a little bit about, I saw a story on the news this morning about that guy, one of that guy's daughters, who seemed quite lovely and
Mm-hmm.
like maybe 19, 20 years old, really looking forward to coming to the US to go to medical school. Someone who wanted to help people.
Yeah.
And her dad, I'm going to kill as many Zionists as I can, and then I'm going to kill myself, so I'm yet another,
Martyr.
martyr.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just, I still can't get how somebody, because I'm just not that kind of person myself, I guess, that justifies either the extreme level of what you're talking about and trying to kill a bunch of people,
Right.
or the people that try and do it through more covert, manipulative.
Right. Soft power, which
Right,
is soft power is the feminine expression of power.
right,
Not the female, but the
right,
feminine expression of power is soft power. And
right,
that's propaganda. It's only publishing certain points of view in the mainstream media, um, or lying in the mainstream media in order to manipulate people.
right,
I mean, that guy, not for nothing, was here illegally. His visa expired 3 years ago,
yep,
but because we haven't been enforcing our borders, and nobody advocates for enforcing borders because they like to be gratuitously cruel. It's because we have a right to protect ourselves.
yeah,
And that he could have been here legally and done the same thing. There's no question about that. I'm not saying that what
right,
happened, but in this case, if we'd have been enforcing our immigration laws and that guy left when his visa expired and we made sure he did leave, this particular violent act would have been prevented.
right, right, yeah.
So you're up against the clock, I believe.
Oh, yeah, it's 8:40.
Pretty good conversation.
Very good conversation. And friends and neighbors out there watching this is part of the evolution coming of Undaunted.
Yeah.
So stay tuned.
Stay tuned.